titled Golden Lady, and that was in 2015. And then another solo exhibition at the Knox College at Galesburg, Illinois in 2015. There he showed his Mother and Son series. Mario's art has been included in several group exhibitions in New York and Michigan. Nearby recently, his work was included in the Detroit Artist Market exhibition and as well at the Nambi Center for Contemporary Art. And again, those were group exhibitions. Some of the awards that Mario has received, one was in 2015. He was selected for the Artist in Residence program at Knox College. And let's see, in 2012, he received the Stacy Scholarship, and that was from the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In 2011, he received the International Art Materials Trade Association's Foundation Award. That was for him as a visual arts major. That was a scholarship. His work is in a number of collections. A couple of public ones are the Winston-Salem State University collection and the Knox College collection. A couple of private collections are the Jimenez Cologne collection and Peggy Cooper Caffrey's collection. Mario will now step up and begin to discuss with you his imagery that merges contemporary art issues, relevant contemporary art and social issues regarding aesthetics, race, class, and gender. So let's give him a warm welcome home to Detroit and the DIA.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. I want to thank the DIA. I want to thank Valerie Mercer. I want to thank the Friends of African and African American Art for allowing me to be here, be home. I'm a little nervous because I'm speaking in front of people that I know. It's funny because I, talked at different universities and stuff. It's real casual, but now everybody kind of knows me, and it's like, I really don't think what I talk about. So, I'm going to talk about a few things, but I kind of want to begin with the DIA and just how humbling this experience is, because I used to work here, I used to work at AV, I used to work back there, rolling up the cords. One of my first jobs was at the DFT, and then I was an usher. So if you've been coming to the DFT for a long time, you probably saw me behind the window taking your money. Another thing that a lot of people do not know is that my mom and my dad, they met here at the DIA. So, if the DIA wasn't here, possibly I wouldn't be here. So I'm extremely thankful. I'm really happy to speak here. And I guess we can kind of get started. So we'll start with my name. So that's but this will give you an idea of kind of what I'm about. But essentially, my mother's an artist. Born and raised here in Detroit. I went to Cass Tech. CT. I'm the one second son. Right knows it. So, I've been doing, kind of going over my slides before this presentation. I realized I had a lot of work, tons and tons of work, and I didn't want to bog you down with too much. So I kind of oriented it so you guys can kind of get a sense of basically the span of everything that I've done. But essentially my work is about talking about my experience in this world, right? I'm thinking about art, historical painting in the context of my body and what that looks like. Because when I was young, coming into this museum, often, I would spend my time in the European galleries and the American galleries and seeing a lot of amazing historical paintings. But one thing that I started to notice as I got older is those paintings orienting themselves as being the norm, right? They are seen as human experiences. When I watched and looked at all the paintings, they're talking about biblical stories, Greek mythology, all these things that show one body representing entire human history. And when I analyzed these things, and I looked at it, I didn't see it as, a white body representing these things. But as I got older, I'm like, I'm not represented here. I'm not anywhere in the paintings that I love. I'm not anywhere in this history that kind of inspires me to create, right? And if we think about European paintings, they've got they received all their knowledge, right, from Greeks, because essentially the Renaissance came from the Greeks, and the Greeks got all their knowledge from Egypt. So essentially what we're looking at is Africa, right? We're looking at Africa giving them the knowledge to have all these historic paintings, these European bodies that represent human history. So what I want to do is talk about the present moment. I want to talk about what's happening now and reflect that in my work. And I can only do that from my perspective, which is to represent me, people that I love, and what that looks like in the world. So I want to talk about, different stories, and I want to use the black body to represent the universal message. But often, that story and that history that we have seen today in the world especially is a perspective that's deliberate, coming from my body, my mother's body, my grandmother's body, and how that is seen walking through the world, right? So some of the first things that I'm gonna show you, we kind of go, through college since I'm in D, so I'm gonna kind of start early and then we'll move forward from there. So this piece was like one of the first pieces that I did, one of the first paintings, I guess, getting into oil painting, and it's called the Hip Hop Lunch. And I believe music and hip hop is music in general is really important to me. Understanding the language of music and how they talk about everything, right? They talk about a human experience, but of course from a certain perspective. So I wanted to kind of play on, the Brady Bunch, but essentially use the icons of hip hop, and each individual in the painting is looking at somebody that inspired them, right, through their work. And I learned about this through videos of Kanye saying Nas is my inspiration, or Nas saying MC Lyte, inspired some of his songs. So, and I wanted to include black women too that were really major in the beginning of hip hop. Some of the hip hop icons. So this piece was one of the first pieces where I really started to explore, color and different things that I didn't understand yet, but I did it anyway. So, yeah, this is, I did this, I believe, in 2008, I want to say. And this piece was happening, and I did this in 2010, and this piece is called Detroit's Crisis. I think that's 313-273-6170. But essentially what I wanted, during that time, it still is a huge crisis in the Detroit public school system right now. But there was a lot going on with a lot of the schools that were closing. All the, Detroit public schools, everybody here that's from Detroit could probably name a school that closed that they went to or something. But around this time, there was, I think, a financial manager that came in and kind of, took over, and they were closing all these different schools. And then you had all these kids that were being pushed to these individual overcrowded schools, right? But essentially, the building was real, the number was real. I was hoping that people would call, but I kind of see that you can't really call because you can't see what the other number is. But I was making sure in that title that you can kind of dial that, because I was hoping that a lot of people would ring in for this, for this number about what was happening. But the piece was inspired because I was over at my grandmother's house, and there was some guys kind of literally on the grass, and they started to fight. And often, what the media portrays is that, black men are aggressive, they're criminals, all of this stuff. But, we all know personally, we have family members, and we see that that's not the case. But during this fight, over at my grandma's house, which is, off of Joy Road, so I was over there in that neighborhood, and then I saw these guys come, and they separated the guys, they broke them up. And I thought that was a really powerful moment, and something to kind of portray with everything that's happening, everything that was happening for all the schools that were closing, right? And this disregard for black boys, for black girls, for black kids, black students. So I really wanted to talk about that and talk about the state. If you see on this gentleman right here to the far left, he has a wedding ring on. So I also wanted to show things that aren't often seen that you kind of got to spend time to look at, right? Because that's what painting is about. That you want somebody to linger. You want somebody to stand in front of there for as long as possible. Like, you don't want them to move. You just want them to stay there for about an hour or something, constantly. So, so that was this painting that I did in 2010, and this was right after I graduated from CCS. This piece right here is called The Freedmen's Bureau, The American Dream. And I also did this piece in 2010. And while I was reading W.E.B. Du Bois's book, Souls of Black Folks, it talked about a lot, because W.E.B. Du Bois is one of my, well, that book, I guess, is a big inspiration for me. But it talked a lot about, Reconstruction. What happened immediately after slavery, right? Everybody's promised 40 acres and a mule, essentially, which was what was supposed to happen. But then Lincoln was assassinated. You had a new president come in that redacted pretty much everything that he gave to them. So you had a lot of the slave masters that only thing that they were required to do was declare their, allegiance to the United States, to the Republic, and then they can get their land back. So what that did, all the slaves that just got that free land, they now were in debt to the slave owners that came back and took that land back. So essentially, you had slavery happening all over again, where they had to work that land off. So it was no longer 40 acres and a mule. It was like, okay, you're free, but not really, because you have to just work because you owe me this amount of money. So I think about things like that, and I think about it in relation to what's happening in today. And around that time, this is a painting of my brother-in-law and my sister. And that's me in the background, by the way, and then that's my best friend Alonzo back there, but that's not important. I use basically people that are close to me to talk about a lot of these stories and use them as models, because I'm inspired by, the Baroque period, by Caravaggio, by Rembrandt, a lot of these painters that I admire. So essentially what happens especially in urban neighborhoods, is you have people that nobody wants to remain in the hood. I don't know, I think there's a big misconception that people, there's like the idea out there that, people don't want to work, they're lazy, they just want to, stay in that position, but nobody wants to remain there. And in Detroit is really unique because you have hard-working people in communities that are really run down, extremely hard-working people. And they want to better themselves, right? They want to kind of stay, they want to stay in their community, they want to stay in Detroit, they want to stay in Michigan, but there's not a lot of opportunity. You got the public school system that's been run amok, and they want to better their kids, right? So you have a dilemma. Do I stay in the city and kind of grab some of this opportunity that's happened, or do I move to the suburbs where there's a better school system and things like that? So essentially what I'm talking about is this history of the Freedmen's Bureau and this promise of land and this promise of advancement, right, that still kind of remains and lingers today. So what you have is this couple, this married couple, so you see their wedding ring, and they want to kind of get out, but they love Detroit. So what do? And you have, in the background, this violence that's kind of just happening all over the place. So this is a piece that I created in 2010. And this was also in between undergrad and grad school, and I'll get to that. But so maybe I should talk about that too. So right after CCS, I graduated in 2009. I took 2 years off before I went to grad school. And they had a huge film incentive here in Michigan. I don't know if you guys remember that. But they were hiring a lot of local people. So that was my first job out of college, was working as a set sculptor. So, you know, paid really good.